Welcome back to .NET Rocks. This is Carl Franklin.
And it's Richard Campbell.
We are in our respective sides of the continent.
Corners,
yes.
Yes.
Almost, I think we're probably the same latitude, are we not?
I think I'm a little further north than you are.
Yeah, you're probably right. You are wearing the red-green shirt, after all.
Today I am, yes. You know what? It's cold. It dipped below freezing briefly last night. So, it's there's no snow or anything. But it's good to wear the flannel when it's cold.
Yeah, you definitely look like you could be out chopping trees and collecting sap.
I'm ready. I'm ready. Yeah. You guys have got the sugar maples. We don't have sugar maples over here.
Yeah, that's right. You have other biological manifestations.
We have alders and birches and stuff. And I've had birch syrup, and I do not recommend it.
I'm diabetic. I can't go. I had this friend who said, "Hey, you going out for Halloween? You going trick or treating?" I said, "Diabetics don't trick or treat. Think about it.
It's not a thing. No,
it's not a thing. Type 2 diabetes for those who haven't been listening."
Lucky you.
Anyway,
all right,
let's roll the music for Better Know Framework.
Awesome. All right, man, what do you got?
Well, I kind of mentioned this, I don't know, 1 or 2 weeks ago, that I put together from all of the disparate content that I had this 5-day Blazor WebAssembly training for a group in Ireland. And it was great because I had to get up at 3:30 in the morning.
Wow.
And my day was done at 11:30 a.m. But what I had to do was put together stuff that I had, but just tailor it toward Blazor WebAssembly and add a couple of more modules. So basically, I came up with a 5-day workshop.
Wow.
And now I'm sort of shopping that. So if you want to learn about it and the topics that I have for your custom class, you can go to appvnext.com/training.
Awesome. You come full circle, man.
I really have. And I feel like, with .NET 7, so has Blazor.
Yeah.
Blazor is really being taken seriously, by companies that were sort of on the fence, and we'll wait and see what happens and how it plays out. But especially the WebAssembly stuff, man, it's gotten really good.
You had the sense right from the very beginning with Blazor. You're like, this speaks to me, and if it speaks to me, it speaks to other developers. So you've been all in for Blazor since Steve Sanderson blew our minds in Oslo all those years ago.
Yeah, that's right. And I was kind of in because Steve Sanderson was in. If Steve says this is cool.
Steve thinks it's cool. It's probably cool.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
So that's my Better Know Framework. Know it, learn it, love it. Who's talking to us today, Mr. Campbell?
I grabbed a comment off of show 1779. So that's the show we did back at the beginning of 2022 as part of our 20 Years of .NET series, the one we did with Miguel Diaz-Casa. And this comment comes from Paulo, who says, "This is an interesting show with Miguel. It's always a pleasure to hear what he has to say on the security aspects. I was a bit disappointed to see the conversation deviate into C++, Swift, and Rust, instead of what could still be improved in .NET, and bring it into those domains instead of having companies like Unity creating C# subsets with the Burst compiler, or Wilderness Labs' efforts to bring it in the IoT world. But in regards to security in general, maybe the upcoming law in Germany and other countries regarding the liability for faulty software is the push the industry needs to make security actually part of the development process and not an afterthought." And after reading Paulo's comment, I went to reading because I did not know about any new laws. And it's absolutely true. Germany at the beginning of 2022 passed new civil order laws. So these are like baseline laws about warranty and fitness of software, including, get this is one of the statements in it, is the obligation of the seller extends to updates that are necessary to ensure digital products remain in compliance with the purchase agreement. Updates include function maintaining updates and security updates, and the updates must be provided free of charge.
Yeah, of course.
It makes sense, but
makes sense
to have it as law, and specifically around security, like that is not a trivial obligation they're putting in place there to say.
Well, but it's necessary. It's kind of like, the extended warranty on your car, right? If there's some sort of flaw in your car that allows somebody to steal it, for example, or
make
cause
it
you
unsafe,
to crash,
right?
or make it unsafe, you want to take that to the dealer. You want them to fix it free of charge.
Yeah. But even cars have a limited warranty. Like the warranty does end, but recalls supersede the warranty.
That's right. Yeah.
And so the implication in this is the same concept that if you've made this software for any length of time, you may have the obligation there to maintain its security.
And, before we leave this topic and introduce Joylynn, I wanted to call out a story that we talked about this week in Security This Week. Mm-hmm. And I put the link in the chat window for you, Richard, so you can add it. But essentially, this is an exploitable flaw in SQLite that happens because SQLite's written in C or C++, and it's a classic buffer overrun.
Right.
Right. And we were talking about that in the podcast you mentioned in the episode. And so, magic strings, man.
Magic strings.
Thank God we don't have to deal with that in .NET land, but those are serious problems and in stuff that we rely on.
Well, I think that was one of Paulo's points, right? As you go down to these low-level languages where we still have these issues, one of the upsides to programming in C# and living in a managed runtime is that Microsoft has the responsibility for a lot of that kind of management, so you don't have to think about it. It's not going to propagate into your software.
Right. But if you're using and counting on a dependency that uses C++ or C#, right, like SQLite.
Yes. Yeah. Very reasonable.
Now you've got a problem, or you might.
Well,
have
one
a
of the
problem.
talking points, I don't recall, of that show with Miguel was during the log4j exploit.
Right.
And Microsoft too was going through its own software. And you're like, wait, log4j, that's a Java thing. It's like, oh, where there's Java at Microsoft, there's Java everywhere. So, they were battling those concerns as well. And it is all part and parcel of this. This is software that companies depend upon. And when these vulnerabilities appear, they have to be addressed. And we are now seeing legislation around that in a serious way. Like, to me, this also reads as software is growing up. It is the underpinnings of society. And so it's going to have the same rules and responsibilities as every kind of engineering.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
That's what I got. Paulo, thank you so much for your comment, and a copy of Music to Code By is on its way to you. And if you'd like a copy of Music to Code By, write a comment on the website at .netrocks.com or on the Facebooks. We publish every show there. And if you comment there and I read it on the show, we'll send you a copy of Music to Code By.
And definitely follow us on Twitter. I'm at Carl Franklin. He's at Rich Campbell. Send us a tweet. Don't worry about them buffer overruns because Twitter is run. I think it's run in a managed environment. It has to be.
Wasn't it famously like Ruby on Rails, but then they migrated off of that?
Yeah, and who knows what it's going to be now in Muskland, right?
Oh, I'm sure it'll be great.
I'm sure it will.
Chief Twit tells us so.
You keep calling him that. Hardly a twit.
He calls himself that.
Does he? Yeah. All right. Now let me introduce Joylynn Kirui. Joylynn is an InfoSec evangelist who believes in empowering developers and users in general on security best practices. She has vast experience in web and mobile app security testing, DevSecOps, and GSM security, having previously worked in the telco industry for 6 years. She has a passion for mentorship and training students and empowering them. She's spoken in several conferences where she shares her knowledge in cybersecurity and software development. Also among the top 50 women in Cybersecurity Africa 2020 finalists and Woman Hacker of the Year Africa 2020. Holy crap, man.
Do not let this lady anywhere near your laptop. She's
absolutely. And we might also add, she's a senior cloud security advocate at Microsoft based in Nairobi, Kenya. Welcome, Joylynn.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe just to correct something, I'm actually based out of Nairobi, in a city called Nakuru, which is famous for flamingo and a lot of tourism as well.
Wow.
Nice.
That's great.
It's west of Nairobi?
East of Nairobi.
East.
Okay. East of Nairobi.
Okay. Maybe it's depending on which way you're looking at the map. No? I didn't.
For some reason, we called it the Northern Hemisphere and pointed it up. It's very unfair, but it is what it is.
I know. It's true. Yeah. All right. So, okay. We have this application. We know developers hate security. How do you know? How do you know what your vulnerabilities are right off the bat?
Okay. So just to lay it out there, no application is 100% secure.
No,
that's for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you say that your application is secure, you're not looking hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So in terms of saying that maybe your application is out there, it's already in production, how would you tell if it's vulnerable? So you have to be quite intentional about getting to know if your application is actually vulnerable. Because the thing is, we have 0-day vulnerabilities. So these are vulnerabilities that come on a daily. So you have to know what component of your software is actually vulnerable to that 0-day.
And a 0-day, just to clarify, is one that hasn't been publicized yet or nobody knows about on the 0th day.
Yes. So you'll probably find that today there's a CVE 2022 11 and then given a particular number. So 0-day will have to be publicized and then now they issue a CVE number. Right. So you would go in and then now see if my application is actually vulnerable to this CVE or this 0-day vulnerability.
Right.
Yes. And then some cool stats actually.
And these CVEs tend not to be written as, here's how you test for this, really. Like, It's fairly challenging to read a CVE and say, now, how would I know if I'm vulnerable to this?
Yeah, it's quite hard. That's why you have to know, you have to keep up to date as well in terms of what's being released every single day.
Right.
And you also have to know what components incorporated are in the new application. So that's why we talk about the Sbomb as well, software bill of materials. Yes. So this one shows all the components, the dependencies of your application. So at least if you know that there's this particular CVE and then one particular component is vulnerable, you should be able to go back and see which other applications are vulnerable.
Right. In general, the best defense is to patch every day, right? And whatever patches are available, get the latest NuGet packages. You just have to do that constantly.
Yes, definitely. And also, you need to have real-time security monitoring. So monitoring applications in production helps to detect and also perform and to check performance as well as security vulnerabilities. So in Azure, we have several Azure services that can help in application monitoring. So we have one called Application Insights. So this is an extensible application performance management, which is an APM service for web developers on multiple platforms. So you can use it to monitor your live web applications, and then it also automatically detects performance anomalies as well. It also includes powerful analytical tools to help you diagnose issues and understand what users actually do within your application. So you have that overall view. Mm-hmm. And we also have Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So Microsoft Defender for Cloud is a cloud security posture management and cloud workload protection platform for all of your Azure, on-premises, and multi-cloud resources. So when you talk about cloud security, two things usually come in mind. So CSPM as well as CWPP. So CSPM is the cloud security posture management, and CWPP is the cloud workload protection platform. So when you're talking about Microsoft Defender for Cloud, we want to check for Defender for Cloud Secure Score, which continually assesses your security posture so that it can be able to track new security opportunities and precisely report on the progress of your security efforts as well. So we also have
one of the problems that, I face in my company is we develop an application for a customer and it's hosted in their Azure or whatever. And we take a dependency on say a JavaScript library, right? And let's say they just go live to the CDN and link directly to the latest version, which I don't recommend, but if, they're using a JavaScript library and then it turns out, you read your CVE list of the day, and sure, in our bill of materials, we're using that as a dependency, and in the version we're using, there's a bug. So it would be really cool if the Azure tools would notice that against the list of vulnerabilities and the dependencies we have and notify us. Right? Is that something that it does?
Yes, it does.
Wow.
So Yes, it does.
That's great.
What tool is that?
So that's Microsoft Defender for Cloud.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like,
because
hey.
when I heard Carl describing this, I thought Dependabot from GitHub.
Okay.
I get those emails on a regular basis for keeping stuff up to date. But that's, of course, only if you've got your code checked in through GitHub.
Right.
Yeah. So the thing is, it also gives you recommendations on how to secure your workloads with also step-by-step actions that you can use to protect your workloads from also known security risks. It also gives you alerts to defend your workloads in real time so that you can react immediately and prevent security events from developing.
That's great.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is amazing. I've been really impressed lately, and I told Richard this, and I mentioned it on the show a while ago. When one of my Azure properties was going slow and not working, I just went to the troubleshooting section in the portal, and not only did it tell me what was wrong and why, but what steps I could immediately take to alleviate the situation. And it was right. And I was amazed because I don't really, I'm an old school guy, right? I mean, I come from, every recommendation is an upsell in my world, right? But it wasn't. It was the right thing to do. I was really, really impressed. So well done.
I'm sure that was you, Joylynn. You did that.
Yeah.
Right?
Thanks, Joylynn.
There's actually 3,500 security experts in Microsoft. So I just happen to be among them.
You mentioned the software bill of materials. Is that a tool? Like, how do you go about building out a software bill of materials for all of these apps internal to my organization?
So actually, I think it was back in July when Microsoft open sourced its Sbomb tool. So I'll share a link whereby you can be able to go in and install the tool and just find a way of what it does, it goes and also gets all the components within your application. So I think the best way would be I can share a tutorial on how you can go about using the tool and finding all your components within your organization.
Awesome. I'll just add it to the show notes. But that's a GitHub library of the Sbomb tool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And so do I run this against existing apps? Is it part of my CI/CD pipeline? Like, how do you maintain an Sbomb using tools like this?
You can maintain it so it depends. So if you want to run an Sbomb at this particular instance for your application, yes, you can do it on need basis. And you can also do it continuously as well for a particular resource.
Great.
Yeah, there's a whole section here on integrating it into your CI/CD pipeline. That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
It's like, as we do a deploy, run it through the tool so that you have that list. So if a CVE shows up for a particular library, you just have to search through your Sbombs for, here are all the products we've got to use it.
And it's not as simple as looking at your project file and looking through your NuGet packages and then looking through your JavaScript library links in your index or whatever. It's not that simple, is it? Because we have dependencies, we may be specifying that we want to use this particular NuGet package, but it has dependencies, and it might have dependencies on JavaScript that are completely hidden from you. So, yeah.
Well, and who wants to look through every project?
Well, yeah. Well, as a developer, I kind of do that, but you're right. I don't. I want some other tool to figure it out and tell me when I'm exposed to a vulnerability.
Yeah, if I'm living in SecOps world, it's here comes the CVE. How many projects are vulnerable?
Yeah.
Because then I need to talk to a whole bunch of developers, I expect.
Exactly.
And I guess that's part of the equation here, which is eventually there's somebody who's kind of overseeing all of this or is responsible to some degree to make sure that the folks are concerned when there's a major 0 day coming along. I mean, they don't come every day. I'm looking at the CVE list right now of vulnerabilities from that Microsoft's maintaining, and there was only one in October. That was a studio code exploit.
There was an Azure thing too that happened just a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a week ago.
Yeah.
But it was in the cloud and it was patched, and fortunately,
I had it stored in the wrong order. There was lots in October.
Yeah. Fortunately, if there's something that happened in Azure, you don't really have to worry about it because Microsoft is on it. But if you have an on-premises SQL server or something like that, yikes! Now you got a problem.
Yeah. Ask me about Exchange.
I'd rather not.
Okay.
So actually in October, if you check cvedetails.com, in October itself, we had 1,877 CVEs.
How many of those could we as users have done anything about?
So you'll find actually majority of them, because if you check them, you'll find it's around segmentation, around an outdated Linux kernel.
So these are CVEs for everything, not just for Microsoft or Azure things. Yeah, okay. Wow.
Man, that's a lot.
That is a lot. And by the way, I know I mentioned my other podcast, Security This Week, but that's what we do. We go over the last week's list of stories based on these CVEs and sort of break them down and laugh at people, and especially ourselves.
Yeah, it's just the numbers are so vast, right? This is enough to drive you out of the industry, I swear. Like, how do you make software looking at this level of exploits?
Yeah, it makes one believe that people are evil inherently. And I don't believe that.
Yeah, and that bad things are going on.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I mean, that's the big thing is, like, especially for us who've been in development for a long time, it's like once upon a time, these were hijinks, right? They were university kids that were experimenting with worms.
Script kiddies.
Right. And it was just propagation software. These days, it's people making money off of ransomware, right? Like, that's the real conversation going on. And I'm working on my end of year run as show, and we have a whole conversation on what we're going to talk, what we care about is sysadmins for 2023. And it is, I have to renew my cybersecurity insurance, and ransomware is a big deal. Like, it's no fooling.
Right.
But here we are on the other side of this. Is like, you get ransomed because there's vulnerabilities in software that allows the black hats in.
How many of these, and I know the answer to this, but I want our listeners to know, how many of these CVEs or exploits come down to social engineering? I mean, don't give me a number, but I think a lot of them, right? I mean, a lot of these things that happen, in the hacks that happen, the CVEs are discovered vulnerabilities and bugs, but a lot of the hacks that happen are the result of social engineering. Like, is the door to the server room locked? Stuff like that. Did somebody give away a password to somebody who called the help desk and pretended to be somebody else? Phishing attacks, right? So those are things that unfortunately you can patch all you want, but it comes down to basic rules about what do you do and what do you not do in 2022 and beyond to prevent yourself or others on your team from being exploited. Don't click on those links. If somebody sends you an email, don't click on it with a link. Go to the place that you trust and you have an account on, and then see if there's any issues that you need. Things like that. But that's, like, I think, out of the realm of our discussion. So we have these great tools in Azure that can automatically create bombs for us and give us notifications when there's something that we can fix that we're being exploited. What other tools are available to developers to help them?
Oh, awesome. So there are very many tools available. I like that you mentioned phishing, but I would say that actually majority of 80% of security vulnerabilities comes from dependencies or third-party components that we actually integrate to our applications. Yeah. So that's an important place where we have to focus our security efforts in. So we have various phases of the development lifecycle. So we have various tools which you can integrate throughout the development lifecycle. So we have the pre-commit all the way to the operating and monitoring. So in the pre-commit, we look at threat modeling. Mm-hmm. We also look at IDE security plugin. We also look at pre-commit hooks as well as secure coding standards, as well as peer review. So these are all important that developers need to know and understand and also incorporate. So some of the tools that you can use here is the Microsoft Threat Modeling tool to be able to identify threat vectors. We also have IDE security plugins like for CodeQL, which does code scanning. You can be able to use it in your IDE, be it VS or VS Code. And then you can also be able to use like pre-commit hooks. If your application has like hard-coded credentials, it will prevent you from pushing it to your repo. So we have all these functionalities. So in terms of secure coding standards, this one is what I usually tell organizations. They need to empower the developers to understand what is actually secure and what isn't. And they need to empower the developers by training them how to use these security tools from the IDE all the way until they push the code. Yeah.
And I'm going to interrupt for one moment for this very important message.
If you're enjoying this episode with Joylynn, talking about securing your existing applications, you should know that Joylynn is delivering a webinar in February called Shift Happens, How to Deploy DevSecOps Principles in the Development Lifecycle.
Joylynn is going to show you how you can shift security left practically from your IDE to the cloud by integrating application security testing extensions in your IDE, code scanning, secret scanning, dependency review, and how you can connect your GitHub repository to Microsoft Defender for Cloud.
You can register for the live event on Thursday, February 9th from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern, or catch the episode on demand afterwards.
Learn more and get registered to attend at aka.ms/DevSecOpsDNR. And we're back. It's .NET Rocks. I'm Richard Campbell. That's Carl Franklin.
Hey.
I'm talking to our friend Joylynn a bit about, securing our apps. And you mentioned before the break this threat modeling tool. So what's a threat modeling tool? How would I use this?
Thank you. So for threat modeling, it's an engineering technique where you can use to help you identify threats, attacks, vulnerabilities, as well as countermeasures that could affect your application. So there are actually 5 major threat modeling steps that we use. The first one is defining security requirements. And then what to do next is creating an application diagram, at least having an architecture of the whole application, the way it's incorporated, integrated. And then the third, we try to identify threats. So if I'm using this particular application, what threat vector can be used to compromise this application? So it can be something like, is this API public facing? Am I using secure endpoints as well? So there are a lot of things that we look at in terms of identifying threats. And then the fourth stage of threat modeling is mitigating threats. So how do you go about mitigating these threats? And then the last one is usually going into doing validating that the threats have been mitigated. So threat modeling should be a part of your routine of development lifecycle. So what this does, the Microsoft Security Development Lifecycle uses Stride and provides a tool which you've just mentioned, the Microsoft Threat Modeling tool. So what is Stride? So Stride is a threat modeling methodology. So Stride stands for S is for spoofing. I know, Carl, you probably know some security, what spoofing is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fake credentials.
Fake credentials, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's all about users' authentication information, such as username and password. And then T is for tampering, which involves the malicious modification of data. And then R stands for repudiation. So it is associated with users denying doing a particular action. So we should be able to say that this particular user actually did this. And then I usually stands for information disclosure. So this involves exposure of information to individuals who are not supposed to access that data.
Right.
And then we have denial of service. Denial of service is whereby a valid user is not able to use a particular service because the service is no longer available. And then E stands for elevation of privilege. So whereby an unprivileged user is able to gain privileged access. and thereby has sufficient access to probably compromise or destroy the entire system.
Yikes. You talked about denial of service. There's a good model for that, which is, you ever been like backstage at a rock concert and you're like, there's one person ahead of you and they're talking to the star and you just want to ask like a question and shake their hand, and they're going on and on and on and on about this problem, that thing, and that, this gear and that stuff. And I loved you on this album and blah, 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 blah. And they don't shut up. And then the guy goes, oh, time's up. I'm out of here. That's a denial of service attack.
That is denial of service. I noticed in the Microsoft security code analysis tools, they're now pointing at the OWASP code analysis tools. They're saying, hey, focus on these. We're supporting that.
Yes, they also support that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but this is sort of the next tier, is actually running your code through malware scanning, credential scanning, like all of these different aspects that can help your code be more secure.
So if we have these great tools, do we need to hire a penetration testing company? Is that something that everybody should do before they go live?
Yes. So I'm saying that because
okay.
I've been there. So I have previously, before joining Microsoft, I was working as a security assurance officer. So that's basically an ethical hacker. Yeah. So working with developers to identify security vulnerabilities. So you would imagine if we did all this automation, then we would have no work. But yeah, so you would still need to do penetration testing for sure. Because even if you're doing all these automations, let's say in the deploy stage as well, you need to incorporate like penetration testing as well, to make sure that all these security checks that you've done, that you've automated, are actually met. To actually have also an overview if something was actually missed out. Yes, and also that's why you also check for security acceptance tests to see if it's actually meeting all your policies, because some of the checks that are automated are not like customized according to your organization. So you'll find that maybe my organization only allows like 3 password attempts. So not unless you go into the tool and then you customize all those, you'll have to do like some bit of penetration testing, and as well as red team, blue team activities, and as well as having like a bug bounty program once your system or application is already in production, to make sure to have several eyes open to identify as much vulnerabilities as possible.
So you mentioned red team, blue team. Just to clarify, the blue team is like the customer, right? The defense, and the red team is the offense. Is that am I right about that? Yeah.
Yes. So the blue team is not actually the customer. It's more of the defense.
Yeah,
so the red team are red team attackers and blue team defenders. Yeah. So we usually play this game of red team versus blue team. So you try to attack a particular system and see if the blue team guys will actually capture that or detect it.
So is penetration testing that mere mortals can learn, like the DevSecOps people on your team can learn, or do they have to hire out the genius companies that do that for a living? So
you can have your in-house penetration testers, and then depending as well with the level of criticality of the application, you can have third-party auditors as well. But it's also very advisable to do like at least 2 times in a year, like security auditing of a particular application by third parties as well.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I also see it as a valid, you've worked on all the pieces of security. You've gone through your CVEs, you've done the analysis and so forth. Like those are all bricks, but you got to test the wall. Like having someone come from the other side. Okay, given we've done all these mitigations, we have some confidence. Now go lean on it.
Yeah.
How does it go? What did we miss? Right. I think it's kind of cool to come from the outside on that. I've seen pen testing organizations go a couple of different ways. One is like you do your internal trials first, then bring in the external person and see what did we miss. But also when we didn't really know what we were doing, we started with pro pen testers. They kicked the snot out of us, but they helped build up our practice. Like that we all got better, started understanding more of what we needed to do so we could do more of that in testing internally as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think it's, the same way you do a reconciliation on a bank statement or in anything. It's like, yeah, you've worked on the pieces on one side. Now press on it from the other side just to see if you've got the whole.
So as long as we're talking about lingo and jargon and stuff and trying to make mere mortals understand this, what does it mean to shift security left? Shift left. What does that mean? I know what it means in binary math, but what does it mean here?
Shifting security left. So as I mentioned earlier, you have all these, like the development lifecycle. It's all about incorporating security checks in every phase of the development lifecycle, from design all the way to delivery. So, and it's also, I can say even before design. So it's whereby everyone has a security first mindset. So you start off with a security culture.
So it means thinking about security earlier in the list of to-do things, right? Moving it up the list, shifting it left?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But also not just leaving it in the left, but also having it in every phase as well.
Right. Okay.
So that's basically DevSecOps. So but it's an evolution in the development approach where security is introduced as a security first mindset culture and automating security into every phase of the software development life cycle.
Cool. Is there anything else that we missed in terms of calls to action for our listeners that may be struggling with some of these issues?
Yes, definitely. So in terms of even in the commit, so the next stage, so we had mentioned about threat modeling, IDE security, but developers can also go into, before committing or CI, they should do static code analysis. So, and also do security unit tests and dependency management. We've mentioned a lot around dependencies. That's why we use tools like GitHub Advanced Security to do your code scanning, to do your secret scanning, and as well as your dependencies management as well. And one thing as well that we look at is infrastructure as code. So this is whereby you can use in your CI/CD, you're incorporating some tools like Terraform, Ansible, to do infrastructure as code to make sure that your infrastructure remains secure as much as possible. And we also look at dynamic security scanning. So whatever you have like in production that's running, it's always scanning for vulnerabilities. And then it alerts you if it finds security vulnerabilities, even for applications that are in production. So we also look at cloud configuration checks as well to make sure that your cloud configurations are secure. And one thing that we also need to check is to do continuous monitoring and to do threat intelligence in order to have blameless postmortems. So continuous monitoring of your applications that are in production to make sure that they're all compliant.
Yeah. Smart stuff.
Awesome.
So what should we be talking to our clients about in terms of, the list of things that they need to run down in order to be compliant or, be more secure?
Oh, and that's an interesting one. So you have to check your website design to make sure that it's extensive, it's feasible. If you have segmentation of your logics, of your database, of your whole zones as well. So you have to make sure that you have like a secure DMZ. You have to make sure that everything, if someone compromises one system, they wouldn't do something called lateral movement and compromise another system. Mm-hmm. So we have to check up around the design and architecture. And that's why it's very important to do threat modeling during the design phase. So at least you identify this threat vector as early as possible. Another thing you can look at is authentication. This is where you confirm SSL is implemented to protect sensitive credentials. You have to confirm cookies are it's encrypted by setting probably something like protection is equals to all. You also have to look at authentication cookies. You have to make sure that you're using strong password policies. You also have to make sure that you're using like password management tools like Azure Key Vault to keep your credentials secure. So around authentication, there's a lot that you have to look at. And then you also have to do authorization for the resource authorizations. So who is actually authorized to access? So you might be authenticated, but are you actually authorized to access a particular resource? This is where we also look at role-based access control. There are several aspects that we look at in terms of authorization. Another key component you have to check for is input validation. So input validation, there's a lot that goes into input validation, because if you don't do input validation, that's where you get vulnerabilities like SQL injection. That's why you have to block a lot with your field, your input field. Mm-hmm. We also have things like parameter handling that you have to check as well. So you have to confirm that your query strings data are actually encrypted. You have to confirm that that you have defense against one-click attacks as well. We check for session data handling as well. Mm-hmm. Confirm that redundant session services are disabled. You have to confirm connection strings are encrypted as well. Confirm that session cookies data are actually hashed. There's a lot that goes into this. So another component that you have to look for is sensitive data protection, to make sure that you're probably using TLS, not using SSL that is not secure as of now.
Right.
So you have to make sure that your web services are actually secure as well. And like you've seen, there's a lot that goes in. So maybe what you can do, I'll also share a link around security guidelines for .NET developers as well, to make sure that you're incorporating this in your day-to-day.
Mm-hmm. Something you might not have thought of is, are we running sensitive code algorithms that are proprietary on the client side, in JavaScript or in C# for WebAssembly? Do we have anything that can be discovered by somebody where there's some special secret sauce algorithm calculation or something that we don't want people to know about? That should be run behind the firewall in an API controller or something.
Exactly.
So have you got any stories of shifting security left, of where the dev teams get more involved earlier on and can knock out the security problems before we have to do them retrospectively?
Yes, actually have like 4 customer stories for DevSecOps that have been success stories. So we have a company called GNCA. It's Dutch. I apologize if I didn't pronounce it well. We also have companies like California Department of Technology, which was another customer success story. We have Infosys as well as Datadog. So I can just highlight what we did with GNCA. So
sure.
GNCA is an insurance company. It's based out in Norway. Mm-hmm. So what they did, they worked with Microsoft to incorporate the GitHub Better Together story, GitHub, and Microsoft Azure to deliver a modern DevSecOps environment, to put security front, center, and it at all times. So they did a developer-first security tooling to integrate seamlessly into the existing development workflow. So this is a success story because they're incorporating both GitHub as well as Azure to eliminating manual configurations in the DevOps pipeline. They're also using our cloud-native tools as well to make sure that you're making sure that your Kubernetes is secure as well. They're also using Microsoft Defender for Cloud in the same ecosystem. There's a lot that they're doing in terms of making sure that they have end-to-end visibility of their resources and keeping the customer data secure. Because it being an insurance company, there's a lot that can go sideways if they actually compromise. So they're using the DevOps securely. They're developing apps securely with a unified solution, whereby they're using code scanning, secret scanning, dependency review, Azure Secure Score. They're also using Azure security benchmarks, using web application firewalls, DDoS protection, Azure firewalls. There's also using Microsoft Sentinel as a theme to make sure that you have a bird's eye view of everything that's happening in terms of monitoring. As we have several services that are available to make sure that you're secure end to end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in some ways, it's kind of overwhelming, all of the different tools that are available just in the Azure space related to security. We rattled off a bunch, but you sort of mentioned Sentinel on the way by there, which I don't think we talked about before. I see that more as an IT tool or a sysadmin tool than a dev tool. Am I wrong?
Oh, you're wrong, actually, because you can go in and so you might see a particular threat vector that's actually being used to compromise a particular application. So you'll go in and customize your Sentinel workloads as well to make sure that that's actually captured going forward.
Right.
Yeah. So you can be able to monitor your applications going forward. Yeah.
So as a developer, I know that my certain parts of my software are vulnerable it can be vulnerable to particular issues, and I can use Sentinel to see if those things are being exploited.
Yes.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
To make sure we're encouraging the tools to watch for the right things for us.
Absolutely. So, what's next for you? What's on your radar? What's in your inbox?
Okay. So we'll be having a webinar, later on. Okay. I think beginning of next year.
Okay.
So I'm encouraging, all the developers to apply. You can go to aka.ms/DevSecOps DNR. So I'll be talking about shift happens, because definitely
you did say
shift happens in security.
You did say shift, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just checking. All right. Well, we'll put that link in the show notes on the page. So if you go to .netrocks.com, the link will be there.
So you're going to be one of the presenters, Joylynn?
I'll be the only presenter. Yeah.
You'll be the
presenter.
For Shift Happens. Okay, That's cool.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for spending this hour with us. It's been great.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome. And looking forward to coming to another episode.
Yes, we're looking forward to seeing you.
Sure.
And we'll see you next time on .NET Rocks.
.NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net and produced by Plop Studios, a full-service audio, video, and post-production facility located physically in New London, Connecticut, and of course in the cloud. Online at pwop.com. Visit our website at dotnetrocks.com for RSS feeds, downloads, mobile apps, comments, and access to the full archives going back to show number 1, recorded in September 2002. And make sure you check out our sponsors. They keep us in business. Now go write some code. See you next time. Got transmitter banned by the FCC. Yes, I'm a